History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. While Cinco de Mayo has been celebrated for years in St. Louis, many are unaware of its origins, commemorating the 1862 victory of Mexican forces over French invaders. Nor do they know of St. Louis's involvement in this historical event. Chris Gordon, MHS Director of Library and Collections, explains the St. Louis connection.
Cinco de Mayo is a very popular holiday in St. Louis. Most people don't know the actual story of Cinco de Mayo. Back in the 1860s, while the American Civil War is going on, there was also a civil war going on in Mexico between two factions, the liberal faction and a conservative faction. And the conservative faction had close ties to European governments, particularly Louis Napoleon of France. And this had to do with the fact that both Britain and France had invested quite a bit of money in infrastructure and particularly mining in Mexico. And it wasn't paying off, and they wanted a return on their investment. So Louis Napoleon decides to invade Mexico, essentially. The leader of the Mexican resistance, Benito Juarez, would form an army, come out and try to repel the invading French forces. And on May the 5th, 1862, the French forces and the Mexican forces meet in Puebla in central Mexico. And lo and behold, the Mexican troops actually defeat the Second French Empire, which is an amazing accomplishment, an amazing victory. The victory doesn't last long. The French actually come back in stronger force. And when they come back, Louis Napoleon of France actually is able to put an emperor on the throne of Mexico, Maximilian I. This continues a civil war of resistance between the Juarez factions and now Maximilian and France. So the American Civil War is still going on at this time, but it's grinding to a halt. The Confederacy is in defeat, but a large number of Confederate generals, including a number from Missouri and Texas, decide to try to keep the fight going. And they go all the way to the Rio Grande and take refuge in Mexico. They send representatives to Maximilian and say, "We would like to seek exile in Mexico. In return, we will establish plantations, and we will also assist you in your fight against Juarez." We have letters in the Missouri Historical Society's collection with individuals that are writing back to their relatives in Missouri, Sterling Price among them, saying how much they enjoy living in Mexico. However, the Mexican climate is not agreeing with these individuals. Sterling Price becomes quite ill, and he is basically forced because of his health to come back to St. Louis. Joe Shelby, who is actually fighting the Juaristas, as they're called, for Maximilian, also realizes that there's no future for them. And he is forced to come back to St. Louis as well. Among the others who are living there is a former Confederate governor of Missouri, Thomas Reynolds. He comes back to St. Louis, and then probably one of the most notable was Alonzo Slayback, who returns to St. Louis, and he's most notable as the person who starts the Veil Prophet organization and establishing the Veil Prophet Parade. So even though it was this failed attempt at keeping the Confederacy alive, it had, disastrous consequences in the end. Maximilian is defeated by the Juaristas. He's actually, in 1867, executed before a firing squad. But it's an interesting interconnection between St. Louis and Mexico and Cinco de Mayo, which is celebrating this May 5th, 1862 defeat of the French that would last until this day.
Next week on History Spotlight, meet the mother of St. Louis and learn how she earned her title.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.